Hello, I'm finally filming my March and April wrap up. I'll be combining them because I read about the same amount of books and not as much as I used to. So I read 6 books in March and 8 in April. I do have one that I didn't have during March, so let's get started. Okay, so for the month of March, like I said, I read 6 books. The first one that I finished is Instructions for Dancing by Nicola Yoon. I rated this one a 3.75 stars. I've been meaning to read this one for a while now because the premise is really interesting. So we are following Evie Thomas. She one day develops or gets this ability to see a couple's end when they kiss. And she's already, I believe, a firm non-believer in love at this point. Kind of just like made her hate or not believe in love even more, because any couple that she witnesses kiss, she will see like how they're going to end, like how the relationship is going to end. She acquires this ability through a book, or like related to a book, which leads her to this dance studio. And so she applies to this dance studio to see, is there a connection? Like she wants to get rid of this or wants to learn more about this new ability that she has. And overall it was really cute, but it immediately shifted the focus from her new abilities to dancing, which I understand that, like, yeah, dancing is a big part of it, but if you suddenly develop a power, no matter what it is, wouldn't you, like, the main focus would be like you trying to figure out your powers, or for her, like trying to figure out like where did it come from, like what does it mean? But it just shifted focus from that to like completely dancing. And there's a lot of cringy moments throughout the book. The ending has a twist that I'm really not going to say anything about, because if I do, it's going to be so obvious. So nothing, just there's a twist that at the end that, was very impactful. So 3.75, it was cute, a lot of cringy moments, but it was a fun read. And then the next one that I read is A True Love Experiment by Christina Lauren. This one was an ARC. I received this one through NetGalley. This one came out May 16th. And this is a companion novel to Soulmate Equation. And I really love the Soulmate Equation. This one I rated 4.25 stars. We are following the best friend of the main character from the Soulmate Equation. She is this author of, I think, adult romance novels, but she hasn't really experienced any true love yet. And we have our love interest, Connor Prince. He is a documentary filmmaker who is suddenly tasked with creating a reality TV show. And so he decides to make a dating reality show starring Fizzy Chen. It's kind of like Bachelor, but the guys are chosen based on like book tropes, like what kind of like male lead they are. Yeah. And of course, they fall in love. Romance between them ensues. And I immediately already like really loved this book, especially with the like their initial interactions with one another. In the beginning, I really already loved it. But then there was that weird conversation between the main lead and his ex-wife, kind of joking about grooming. I don't know if I took that the wrong way, but it was just, it felt weird to me. Like, they made it seem like the relationship was borderline legal because his ex-wife has a boyfriend and the boyfriend is much younger than she is. So it was a little like weird. It was just a really weird joke. And there was this one, I think it was just this one time that the main lead referred to Fizzy, Juno, and CV daughter as females. And it was just like, why? I feel like we've already established that females should not be used unless you're talking about animals or biology, So yeah, just as like those two weird things, but I really did enjoy it. It did give me a lot of anxiety because of, the whole situation with them, being producer and her being the star and her essentially dating these other guys. Oh, and at the end of it too is that they all took like the soulmate test, to see like at the end of it if any of them were like really good matches for her. And then the next book that I read is a 5 stars for me. Another book that I've heard so many great things about, and I've also been wanting to read, When Women Were Dragons by Kelly Barnhill. I was planning on reading this, I think April, because I read her new book. What is it called? The Crane Husband. And I wanted to read this one before that one, but I didn't get around to it. And this is pretty long, and I absolutely love this. 5 stars. So this is set in a world where women turn into dragons, and it's a whole book about misogyny and, the exploration of gender, patriarchy, especially in the time period this is set in, where there is still like that really big difference between what a woman and a man is supposed to be or is supposed to act. They have roles still. and it has tons of metaphors. It has very beautiful writing. It is also coming of age because we're following our main character who has had to grow up really fast because of the really complicated family that she has, and she was forced to take care of her sister, well, her cousin, and eventually to her became her sister. And it's a lot. I can't really fully explain to you like the profoundness of this book, but it definitely tackles, you know, women and the roles of women, and of course, you know, the metaphor of why women are turning into dragons. And it's really interesting to read too, because you get excerpts of the study that's been done about the dragons, the women who turn into dragons, because it's happening all over the world. And there are different points in history where there's like a group of women who turn into dragons, and then it stops, and then it happens again. So it's kind of like a view of society as well, of course. So it's just a lot. I can't really I feel like I'm not the right person to really fully discuss what this book is about, but I love this book so much. I mean, it's 5 stars for me. And then the next book that I read is another arc. This one is Viva, Lola, Espinoza by 𝐁𝐨𝐴. This is a debut contemporary that is described as Pride and Prejudice with a dash of magic. The main character is a book-smart Mexican-American teenager who gets sent to Mexico and spends the summer there with her grandmother. And I was tempted, honestly, to DNF this as 20% because it didn't really intrigue me. At the end of it, 3 stars because it wasn't bad, but it wasn't like the best. I kind of already guessed like how the romance was gonna go. Yeah, it was just okay. I didn't really get anything from this, honestly. And there is a hint of magic in this because she discovers that there is this curse that is set on her family, and she's trying to like figure it out and like get out of the curse, or like banish the curse or whatever. And then I also read Spare by Prince Harry. I'm not going to really talk about this book. It's more of like a personal read for me. My mom has this right now. I do have the physical copy of it. I like the photos though. The photos are really cute. So yeah, and then the next one that I read is a nonfiction book for young adults called Where to Start by Mental Health America. This one released April 11th. Oh, Viva, Lola, Espinoza also was released April 11th. This one I rated 5 stars. So this is a survival guide for teenagers about anxiety, depression, and other mental health challenges. It also has illustrations in the book, throughout the book, which is, for me, I feel like this book was a really great resource for teenagers, for youth, that talks about like mental health and different disorders, and it offers a lot of many different resources. It's a fitting title, really, like Where to Start, because it describes the symptoms of these different disorders and how they kind of like could interact with each other a little bit, and like the labels and what steps to take, essentially. And like, again, they don't really tell you, oh, these are the steps you take, but also like gives you resources to help you also make better choices in terms of like the next steps you're going to take for your mental health. And then the last book, the book that I DNF'd, is How to Marry Keanu Reeves in 90 Days. Now, I feel like I can't really like blame the book entirely for not liking this, because I already kind of knew that I'm either going to really dislike this, even DNF it, or like it, or like it could be a really big surprise and I end up loving it. But it was, I mean, the title itself is already like, it's about a main character who finds out that Keanu Reeves is marrying someone, and she's a big fan of Keanu Reeves, so she travels to LA with her best friend to stop Keanu from getting married. And that whole thing, I kind of already knew was like really outlandish, and I'm probably not going to like, but I wanted to give it a chance because I thought, you know, maybe it's going to be like a really fun book. But it's not. I DNF'd it. I was like hoping that the main character would like make sense, like the whole like idea of her going to LA and stopping Keanu Reeves' wedding would like make sense in a way, like getting to know her first. But no, it didn't really like click to me. So in my head I was like, I'm not really interested in finding out like what's gonna happen, so I DNF'd it. So yeah. Alright, moving on to April. Again, I read 8 books. So the first one is another nonfiction book. This is another arc. This one is You, the Story by Ruta Sepetys. I think that's how you say it. This one is coming out May 16th. This one I rated 5 stars. Again, nonfiction. So it's like a memoir and also a how-to guide for writer. With the guides and the topics that the author talks about, she's also interjecting her own experiences and how she would like write that in a book, and how she has used that experience to write in a book, or to use those experiences as inspirations in her writing. So I think it was really good. I just think that at this point I'm not really interested in writing itself. I feel like this is a really good guide, but like like right now I don't really have a use for it, but it's definitely something that I, if I decide to write again, I would like to like go back and like use as inspiration or as guide to write. And then I read the 7 volumes of Swimming Lessons for a Mermaid. So okay, I guess I didn't read 8, but more like 14 books if we're gonna count each volume of this manhwa. So Swimming Lessons for a Mermaid, we are following 𝐁𝐨𝐨𝐤𝐬. She's a mermaid who can't swim, so she decides to trade her tails for legs to live on land and to kind of, in a way, also see if she wants to go back to the sea, with her being like a really poor swimmer. But one day the star swimmer of their high school swim team finds out her secret, and he offers to teach her how to swim. And it was very, very cute. I rated this one a 4.75 stars. I love the friendship that was formed here, especially because 𝐁𝐨𝐴 seems very, separate from her classmates, because of course she has a secret, a big secret that she doesn't want to tell anyone. Yeah, and it's also a lot about family. I really like the friendship, the different connections that she has made. It's just so much fun. It's YA, it's romance. Of course, it's a bit of a fantasy, but it's really just about like a coming of age story too, because we're following 𝐁𝐨𝐴, who feels like she doesn't really belong in either world because of her ability and inability in a way to swim, but also her not being able to kind of like live full lives in both places, because again, she can't swim, and on land she has to keep her being a mermaid a secret. So it's her like finding her place, but also like finding these connections that help her decide like where she wants to be. She has a really great family, and of course she has a lot to work through within herself, because she has this like swimming complex that obviously affected how she sees herself too. Next one, another manhwa, The Double Agent. This one I rated 4.75 stars. So we are following Sacha Laurent, who lost her parents when the Chechen Republic invaded her hometown, Noroi, and she flees across the borders, and she lived off the streets until she was taken up by General Gerard of the Allied Forces. A few decades later, she has become a nurse, and she was asked to infiltrate the Chechen as a secret agent. She doesn't really have a choice but to comply, because they were essentially like running out of like spies to send. She meets and soon becomes the prisoner of Major General Johann von Willendorf, and it's this really complex, toxic relationship between the two of them. So there's romance here too, but I would say this is adult. It doesn't really have like steamy or spicy scenes, but there's a lot of blood and killing, because we are following a main character who is acting as an agent. And also, it's in the middle of war. And it's a very bloody, gory war. So it's very toxic. It's actually took me a while to read, because I wasn't sure how I was feeling with the romance that I was seeing, because it just seemed like abusive and just like they both are really toxic people. But at the end of it, I was like, okay, it kind of makes sense. I get it. It's really messy. There's a lot of like trauma between the two characters, but I get it. I see it, kind of. And then I read Chain of Thorns by Cassandra Clare. I rated this one at 3.75 stars. I was really excited for this one. This one was set to come out like last year, I believe, like late last year. So I think it was like 6 months behind. Just, I don't know, maybe it's because it's been so long since I've last read the other book that I just didn't feel the same way that I did, because I remember really loving the first 2 books, and then this one was just like, it was okay, it wasn't bad, but I wasn't fully there, I was just reading it. It's more like I'm like separated, not really in the story. Yeah, I don't know, maybe I'm also done with Cassandra Clare's books. Yeah, which is sad, because I really enjoyed some of her books. Like, I thought, like, especially her latest like series, I thought they were like really good, really enjoyable, but this one was just like, I don't know what happened. Yeah. The next one is The Lives of Saints. This one is just a novella by Leigh Bardugo. I have not watched The Shadow and Bone in season 2. The reason why I read this one was because I think it was Leigh Bardugo who said that the producers used this book like really well, because this is essentially just like Lives of Saints in this fictional world, and they were able to like use that as well in this in the series. So yeah, 3.5. I liked it. It's really more like a supplemental read. You don't need to read it to understand and know the Shadow and Bone world. So next, another manhwa. It's a month full of manhwa. Nice to Meet You. This one I rated 5 stars. I cried a lot reading this, especially at the end. At the beginning, I was a bit annoyed by the main character because she's a like typical super klutz but super sunshiny main character, but I have learned to really like throughout reading it, I have learned to really love her. And I also love the love triangle. It's one of those that you want her to end up with both of them, you know? And it's a kind of love triangle too that I believe is like one of the most well done love triangles that I've seen, especially between like best friends. And most of the characters are mature and level-headed, but they still had like so much growth throughout the manhwa. A lot of them already felt like their full like selves and characters, but they had a lot of growth too. You know, it's like a coming of age in a way, but they're all in college, so you know they're a bit more mature. And friendships as well and the sibling relationships I really enjoyed. I feel like they were also really well done. Yeah, I was like sobbing even before the last chapter. Like I was already like crying because I knew I knew that was going to be very emotional, and I had like trouble reading or finishing this manhwa because I was just like crying so much. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one. Like you can tell, I mean, it's 5 stars for me. Oh, let me just, okay, so Swimming Lessons for a Mermaid, A Double Agent, and Nice to Meet You are all in the Webtoon app. So I think they're all free. I believe A Double Agent and Nice to Meet You might be daily pass now, so you know. Swimming Lessons for a Mermaid, I don't know yet, but this has been released for a while now, so I don't know if they're gonna turn this into a daily pass, but I know Double Agent recently turned into one. Nice to Meet You, and I don't know yet, but I know this has ended in quite a while ago too, so I don't know. But yeah, the next one that I read is Where the Drowned Girls Go by Shannon McGuire. This is, I don't know, like 7th, 8th book? Don't quote me on that. I had needed to get back into this Wayward Children series for a while now, but I didn't really enjoy this one. I mean, I liked it, it's 3 stars, but not as much as I used to like the other ones. This is another one of those that I felt like maybe I'm growing out of it. I'm not 100% sure, but I just like Chain of Thorns, it felt like I was like outside of it. Like I'm not really enjoying the series very well. So yeah, maybe I have to reread it. I don't know. Next one, Chasing Pacquiao by Rod Pulido. This is another arc that came out May 2nd. So this is following our main character, who is a queer Filipino-American teenager, and he gets bullied in school and takes inspiration from Manny Pacquiao and takes up boxing to combat the bullying that he experiences at school. But his beliefs are challenged when he discovers or when he finds out that Pacquiao is homophobic. So, a few things. I rated this one 3.75 stars. This is a debut contemporary. The bullying is, I know that this happens to a lot of people in a lot of schools, but it was very brutal and also disappointing because you see how much the system fails. Like these people who get bullied because you have these teachers that are supposed to be, you know, protecting them, but they can't really do anything, or like they don't really do anything. And then at first there were like some awkward uses of the Filipino language that I was like, maybe that's how they use it. I don't know, because I'm not Filipino American. I do live in America, but I grew up in the Philippines, so I was like, oh, maybe that's just how they use it. I didn't really ask my Phil friends, but I was just like, okay, maybe that's how they use it. And then eventually I'm just like, that's a really weird way to use that word. There was just like a lot of awkward usage of Filipino words in here. And then I thought that we were gonna have more of the main character processing his feelings about Manny Pacquiao, especially because he definitely looked up to Pacquiao prior to doing boxing and taking up boxing. But it happened around like, I think the second half, if not the third of the book. So I didn't really see a lot of processing for him in terms of that. And it was part of the premise. Like his whole belief system in a way related to Pacquiao gets shaken because of the homophobia. But we didn't really like get too in depth with that whole thing. I just felt like the pacing could have been different. Elements of the story could have been added earlier on because, you know, it's part of the premise. I would think it would happen in like the first half of the book, not the last half, not the last third of the book. And I thought that that was like how like most of the book is going to go. So yeah, so those are all of the books that I read during March and April. How did your guys' reading out? I'm trying to catch up on the things that I need to upload, most especially the wrap-ups that I have. But yes, that is it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you on the next one.